Welcome on into Pattrn, the first climate change talk show. I'm Steph Abrams.
Hey everybody, I'm Jordan Steele. Today we are of course kicking off the show by suiting up for the 2024 Summer Games.
And I want to say, excuse our French. We're going to do our very best with our French, but neither of us speak it, so bear with us here. This year's Summer Games mark the first competition to fully align with the International Olympic Committee's 2020 agenda, which was basically a push for more responsible, sustainable, and inclusive games. Now, the main goal is to limit carbon dioxide emissions to 1.58 metric tons.
Okay, so we know that sounds like an astronomical number.
Yes, it does.
Let's be real, it is, but it's still more than 300,000 tons less than the last Summer Games, which was held in Tokyo.
That's progress. I like it.
It is progress. Now, to achieve this goal that's this big, organizers have looked over every detail from energy sources down to the food menus.
So you might say they're going for green and not for the gold, silver, or bronze in Paris. By the time the torch is extinguished next month, the City of Light will have hosted more than 10,000 athletes from 200 plus countries. The mayor of the city's 17th district says that he hopes people are drawn in by more than just the history and culture of France. He's hoping their commitment to leave behind a lasting legacy for future generations will also shine through during their hosting duties.
Okay, so during an interview, Mayor Geoffrey Bouillard says Paris' bid for the 2024 Olympic Games and Paralympic Games is backed by our desire to host the games that are sustainable and energy saving. The idea is to consume less energy and leave as little carbon footprint as possible. That was the original plan for our games. Very little new infrastructure was built for the games, which perhaps is the biggest difference between our games and previous editions.
That's good, because a lot of times they build a building and then nothing happens with it after, right? As the world's best athletes arrived in France this week, their first taste of that sustainability theme started with the eco-friendly Olympic Village.
Yeah, from the ground up, the athletes' temporary home is an example of how to put the environment in the winner's circle.
The Olympic Games are a playing field for the world's greatest athletes. During the 2024 Games, competitors from more than 200 teams will call Paris home. Nestled in one of France's poorest neighborhoods, there's more to the Olympic Village than meets the eye. Starting with more sustainable blueprints. Construction began in 2021 with an emphasis on using more natural materials. All 5 residential buildings are cutting energy use and will forego air conditioning. Instead, a system will circulate cold water from below ground into the floors, helping to keep buildings cool during the sweltering summer months. Plus, each apartment will feature a bed made of cardboard able to withstand more than 500 pounds. The beds will head straight for the recycle bin after use, and athletes are free to take their bedding home instead of tossing it into the trash. The $2 billion project created more than 1,000 jobs for local residents, and the home team advantage doesn't stop there. When the Olympic cauldron is extinguished, Paris plans to put the space to good use. Inside the village, more than 2,000 vacant apartments will become available to local residents, while other areas create workspaces for more than 6,000 people. By 2025, the community will also house 2 schools, a hotel, and multiple green spaces, including a public park. Recycling an entire community marks a gold medal win for the environment and a place where the world comes to compete.
This is so interesting, too, because it's like you want what's best for the athletes.
Yes, I'm like, you don't you want the most perfect
condition.
No, and they're sleeping on cardboard beds.
And they're sleeping on cardboard
but
beds.
But I guess if they all are, it makes it an even playing field?
It's a help for the environment. Maybe, but it would be such a bummer if one of them woke up the next day with a huge pain and they can't perform.
I've seen that on social media, and that mattress, there's like a firm side and a soft side, and they had apparently already had on the soft side, like, oh, my back, maybe I'll switch it over to, and they were like, oh, it's already on the softer side.
Oh, so. No, that's not good.
Yeah.
All right, well, we do have some other climate headlines getting some buzz in Paris. Before athletes can bring home the gold, they're going to have to step up to the garbage. No, not just trash talk for the competition. This year's Olympic and Paralympic podiums, they're made from wood and 100% recycled plastic from used food containers.
I think that's super cool.
It is cool. Get this, the organizers say that the new podiums were directly inspired by the sustainability of this year's actual medals.
Yes, those are made with recycled iron from the Eiffel Tower.
Wow.
They are so cool. You may also notice that the metal podiums feature a design similar to the metalwork of the most famous landmark in Paris.
That's cool.
As for inclusivity, each podium has single and multi-level step-ups for equal accessibility. And the phrase "fits like a glove" has a whole new meaning for runners. Keep an eye on distance runner Helen O'Berry. She will be sporting a new shoe called the Cloud Boom Strike LS. Looks pretty cool by looking at that, right? The Swiss shoe brand On engineered this new design using a robot arm that sprays on the thermoplastic upper part of the shoe using heat to attach it to the sole.
It's got to be super light.
No laces, no heel caps, and 75% less carbon emissions to produce the shoe. By the way, O'Berry wore them for the first time at the Boston Marathon, and she won. But she wins everything. Come on, she's like the best. She's incredible.
It's cool, too, to know the backing behind the shoe. Well, world-class athletes run on their stomachs, and the organizers for the Summer Games took a plant-based approach to their menu. The focus is on vegetable proteins with specialties like beetroot, falafel, and grilled eggplant among the 500 options available. People are still going to be able to partake in their traditional staples like burgers, along with a spread of multicultural cuisines, totaling about 45,000 meals per day. By the way, the dining hall at the Olympic Village is inside a repurposed electric power plant.
That is super cool. I would love to eat how the Olympians eat. You know they eat very precisely and very well.
Yeah, a lot of them have to weigh their food, and it's important for calorie intake, especially for the swimmers. They got to eat a lot more calories. It'll be funny to watch how some plates will be massive and others maybe not so much.
But it's all healthy. You don't see that. You know, it's like anytime you wonder, it's like, should we eat that or not eat that? It's like, would an Olympic athlete eat that to train or go to the Olympics? And that always gives you your answer.
Well, other menu items, you got chickpeas and everything like that, so they'll have what they need, which will be great.
That they will. Well, it's time for Facts or Facts, so you can literally feel it in the air.
Well, the U.S. hasn't been the only place dealing with sizzling hot temperatures at all. In fact, Europe's temps have been very, very warm as well. Just taking a look at, the overall forecast as we jump into next week. Look at this. This is in Fahrenheit, obviously. They go Celsius, but we'll transition it for you.
But look at that, from Italy to France all the way to Spain. Everyone is feeling it here. And of course, change is inevitable.
Jeez.
Over time, it's bound to happen. It's been more than a century since the games were last held in Paris, and this year's things will look and feel obviously a lot different.
All right, so we're going to take a closer look at how our changing climate has forged a new standard for athletes and spectators alike.
We wanted to take a look at how the climate has changed in Paris since the last time they hosted the Olympics about 100 years ago. And we found that temperatures have warmed by 5.5 degrees Fahrenheit since the last Olympics. The maximum temperatures and minimum temperatures have risen as well. In fact, minimum temperatures have risen faster than the averages of the maximums, which means that nighttime temperatures are getting a lot warmer, which is concerning for athletes because during this time, they're really going to need to sleep. During the night, they're going to need to be comfortable. And if we experience a lot of extreme heat, that could affect athletes' performance. And so some people might see some of these temperatures and think, well, they're not that high. But we're not just talking about temperature, we're talking about temperature and humidity. So Paris has a very humid climate, especially in the southern part of the country, southern part of France. And so when you add heat and humidity together, it takes a really extreme toll on the human body. So when we have athletes pushing themselves and their bodies to the limit, it's a really dangerous environment to do that in. One of the other factors that's really important in Paris is the urban heat island effect. So, Paris is already getting warmer, but the way that the built environment has been created, it actually increases the heat that is felt in the city. So add on top of those temperature trends, the urban heat island effect. So that's another reason why we're really concerned about people in Paris during this time of extreme heat. We don't know what's going to happen during the Olympics this year, but looking at 100 years of data, it's clear that temperatures are rising and it's becoming more dangerous of an environment and a more dangerous time of year to have these events.
It's hard enough to be in the heat when you're just a spectator or walking around Paris.
Yep.
But when you're exerting that much energy, you are much more susceptible to heat exhaustion and heat stroke.
Which could be make or break for those who are performing in the afternoon versus those who are performing in the morning.
And again, for spectators, I want to emphasize that, if you are happening to go over, you could still feel heat exhaustion or heat stroke even if you're not participating in the games. Now, in the midst of summer heat, people are going to be looking for ways to cool. Of course, the Seine River runs right through the middle of Paris, but you wouldn't want to dive in. Swimming in the Seine was banned in 1923. after the Parisian sewage system overflowed and discharged into the river.
Wow.
That tainted the water with harmful bacteria like E. coli. In response, Paris built an underground storage basin to contain wastewater and reduce pollution. At last check, readings confirmed that the river was safe within the limits there for bacteria for swimming.
All right.
It's like there's a limit. It should just be none, right? That's what you feel like. Although the city has done a lot to clean up, there are still a lot of raised eyebrows ahead of this year's games, including marathon swimming and the swimming leg of the triathlon.
Right, so swimming or wading in the water contaminated with E. coli can cause serious illnesses, in the bloodstream, gallbladder infections, rare cases, you can get pneumonia even.
Yeah, and the symptoms may not appear until days after.
Right.
So you could experience that nausea, fever, vomiting, rash, fatigue. Hopefully you're not eating while you're watching this show.
This is crazy. Is it safe? Yeah, it should be.
There was one time, though, in the Gulf, I remember, there was some sort of bacterial outbreak, and there was a hurricane, and we were just so worried about all that water like coming up, with the storm or whatever. I remember it was really scary.
In the midst of all the speculation, Paris Mayor Anne Hidalgo says that the water is fine. And to prove it, she actually and a group of others took a dip. The group took to the water earlier this month to dissolve those anxieties surrounding whether or not the river would be clean enough to host the events. Days prior, the French sports minister had already dunked into the river to prove the same point, and according to these reviews, there is nothing to worry about.
It was absolutely gorgeous, really. The temperature's fantastic. I swallowed a mouthful of water when I went in, tasted fine, spat it out. Now I'm, no skin problems, no dysentery. I feel beautiful, and I think it's going to be a great success because, it's clean. It feels clean.
Wait, did anyone check in the 3 days after, right? Didn't they say take a few days? I'm just kidding. I'm just teasing.
Well, obviously there are still concerns. They're alive and well for Parisians with the possibility of rain and rising water temperatures impacting the bacteria levels. It'll be interesting to see what the athletes think too.
If the bacteria levels rise to an unhealthy level, organizers do actually have a backup plan.
Oh, good.
But you may not like the sound of this. They will either postpone both marathon swimming and the triathlon by several games or days, or relocate the swimming event to the same location as the rowing events and cancel the swimming leg of the triathlon altogether. Can you imagine training, and then they cancel?
We're trying to give all these good news because of the climate angle, and I'm like, there's so many things that could go wrong here.
No, we're going to be positive. It's all going to go well. There's not going to be any problems in the river.